If you didn't know who this guy was, this is Phil Schneider. Phil was a U.S. government geologist, engineer, and probably one of the most controversial figures in the world of ufology and extraterrestrial subjects. Phil decided to shed light and knowledge on top secret information he had, along with some of the most controversial topics in history. He claimed that coming forward with his information would get him killed. Just a short time after, he was found dead in his apartment. According to an obituary published in the Oregonian, on January 29, 1996, Philip Schneider died of a stroke on January 17th. His death certificate stated that he had strangled himself with surgical tubing, implying that he committed suicide by wrapping a rubber catheter hose 3 times around his neck and tying it halfway in a knot at the front before collapsing headfirst into his wheelchair. Those who knew Phil have no doubt that he was murdered. He was in the process of leaking vital and top secret information to the public that he had knowledge on, and he felt a strong sense of purpose in sharing this information to the public. And he did all of this despite the fact that he was suffering from several physical illnesses at the time, and along that, having cancer. His previous lecture tour in 1995 was sponsored by Al Bellick, a crew member on board the USS Eldridge during the infamous Philadelphia experiment, who knew Phil's father and became good friends with Phil during the tours. Phil was supposed to start another tour in 1996, but he didn't make it because it appears that someone wanted him to stop talking. Or that's kind of what everything looked like it led to. There are several reasons why so many people believed he was murdered. On top of that, there was no suicide note. And the fact that he always told everyone that if he ever committed suicide, you would know he had been murdered. Here, let's take a look at this.
I'm breaking the law. I'm breaking world as well as federal law, coming out and even talking about this to a group of people. I love my country more than I love my life. 2 weeks ago, I was shot in the shoulder. Probably the reason I got shot to pieces and 11 attempts on my life is I am a direct threat.
Prior to his mysterious death, he had already had 13 attempts on his life, which he had only discussed in public and on film. So, what made Phil Schneider a target, and who was attempting to silence him? Make sure to watch to the end and let me know what you think really happened. Hi, I'm Zach and welcome to Rooted Expeditions. Hit that thumbs up and let's dive right into today's story. Phil spent the last 2 years of his life touring the United States, giving over 30 lectures on conspiratorial information pertaining to many issues on governmental deception and involvement in highly classified top secret activities. His work as a structural engineer on government black projects and the construction of deep underground facilities in the United States combined with top secret information he was to discover after the death of his father in 1993, who his name was Captain Otto Oscar Schneider. However, after the death of his father in 1993 and the murder of his friend Ron Rumiel, Phil felt compelled to finally go public and disregard his oath of secrecy in hopes that exposing the truth would simply encourage the nation to wake up to the deception from the government and empower themselves with this knowledge that he had. Phil Schneider was being closely watched due to the secrecy of his work as well as his father's involvement in the black projects. Phil completed a manuscript ready for publication shortly before his death, listing all the deep underground military bases with their exact locations. Along that, details of other U.S. government deceptions, including information on the alien agenda and plans for the New World Order, which Phil pursuing this route resulted in an attempt by a DIA agent to kidnap his daughter Marie. Phil was born in 1947 in a U.S. Naval hospital in Maryland. His father, Oscar, was a captain in the United States Navy who worked in nuclear medicine, and he also helped design the Nautilus, which was the first nuclear submarine built in the United States. During one of his 1995 lectures, Phil revealed that his father was a captured Nazi U-boat commander who was sent to work in the U.S. Naval Intelligence, eventually leading to his participation in the very controversial Philadelphia experiment, which you can learn more about this in my short video I did on this subject. Phil Schneider began attending engineering school and quickly established himself as a gifted geological engineer as well as a structural engineer with both aerospace and military applications. Man, that was a mouthful. I would like to also add that Phil was an expert on explosives, particularly their effects on geological structures. His first job with the government, he built underground mountain bases while also working for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the U.S. Navy. Phil even had 2 social security numbers. Yes, 2 social security numbers. Even his ex-wife would prove this to be correct. He used 2 numbers because he claimed to have one of the world's highest security clearances, which Phil would state that he carried a level 1 security clearance, which he called the Rhyolite Level 38 Factor. Phil told the audience during one of his presentations stating, and I quote, "There aren't many of us to the best of my knowledge. No one else is talking like this. I'm breaking federal law by coming out and discussing this with a group of people." Here, let's take a look at that footage.
I'm going to be real brief about it. I carried a level 1 security clearance, the Rhyolite 38 Factor. There are very few of us. There's nobody except myself, to my knowledge, talking like this.
Now, Phil's decision to even go public with all of this information he had was in 1993 when he said that his best friend, Ron Rummel, was murdered, which this was also officially declared as a suicide, and Phil took Ron's death pretty hard. Phil would state that he believed that 11 of his best friends had been murdered in the previous 22 years, and 8 of them which had been officially declared suicides. So Phil, experiencing so much loss and hurt, he decided that this was the final straw, and that it was time to let the cat out of the bag and get the information out to the public and into the open. According to Phil, the black budget collects a little over $1 trillion every 2 years, amounting to roughly $500 billion per year, or roughly a quarter of the U.S. gross national budget, which that's at that time. Black budget is an independent taxing authority that is not overseen by Congress. It is believed that the CIA, drug operations, the NSA, the DEA, and possibly the FBI are primarily responsible for funding it. According to Phil, an FBI agent attempted to go public with this information in January of 1995 and was later murdered. In 1995, there was 131 active deep underground military bases in just the United States alone, with 1,477 more under construction around the world. These figures, of course, will have skyrocketed since his lectures were recorded and documented on film. Each base is said to cost between 17 and 19 billion dollars to build, and they are built at a rate of about 2 bases per year, using extremely sophisticated methods. Phil worked 17 years as a geologist and structural engineer on these government black projects. He worked on bases in the Nevada desert, including Area 51 and the S4 facility at Groom Lake, as well as Los Alamos in New Mexico. He describes the bases as basically large cities underground, and all these were linked by these high-speed magneto-levitation trains that reach speeds of up to Mach 2. Here, let's take a look at what he says.
Right now, there are 131 active deep underground military bases in the United States. There's 1,477 of them worldwide. My colleague, Al Bielek, has actually been on some of the high-speed railways, the magneto-leviton trains that connect all the deep underground military bases within the United States. He's been on a Mach 2 train, floats off of a single rail at a 3/4 of an inch off the rail, and is what you'd call high tech. We have nothing like this on the surface.
Wow, that's crazy. Let me know what you think. Okay, moving on. Phil claims that 9 underground military bases have been constructed at Area 51, each measuring about 4.25 cubic miles. Phil will go on to say that another 11 bases are located in Idaho alone. In general, underground bases are between 2.5 to 4.25 cubic miles in size and have an average depth of just over a mile. Wow, if this is real, this is crazy. TBMs, or tunnel boring machines, are used to excavate such vast areas of earth. Rather than simply drilling through the ground to create a large tunnel, these machines pretty much melted and vaporized the rock. And the residue from the molten ash from the rocks formed this smooth interior tunnel wall. It kind of reminds reminds me of that movie, The Core? This technology is said to have been developed at Krupp Works in Germany. The machines are said to be capable of tunneling 7 miles in a single day. 7 miles! According to Phil, they have been building non-stop since the 1940s and have managed to keep this construction progress hidden from the public for so long. Phil states that the Black Project circumvents the authority of Congress, which is illegal, along with saying that the New World Order is currently based on these foundations. Phil continues to say that he was lied to, and he would not have done all this work for the government if he had known that the New World Order was involved at the time he was working on all of these bases. Phil thought and believed that the underground bases were believed to be top secret for legitimate national security reasons, which this actually makes sense. Phil goes on to say that while working on one of these underground bases, he went down underground, being led down by a basket, and while down in this tunnel, he came in contact with what he has called aliens. He would go on to say that he was attacked and injured by this alien, and he shows his scars to prove it, along with his missing fingers. He also stated that a Green Beret that went down into this underground tunnel with him gave up his life to protect him. Here, let's take a look at that footage, and you let me know what you think.
We were in the process of the early stages of building. We drilled 4 large tunnel-like holes. Some of them ran 2.5 miles under the surface. Number of the original wells or drilling machines that were used were at the rate of up 2 miles a day. It was fairly rapid. The equipment kept coming up broken. So we wanted to go down, we wanted to send somebody down there, a human observer, or human observers in this case, to find out what was going on. Well, to our total surprise, first of all, the government knew all about it. They didn't tell anybody. When I saw Green Beret and Black Beret people encamped inside of our geologist camp, I knew something was up. The gig was up. First of all, I knew all about the alien agenda. I'll explain that in a few minutes. The large alien grays had been encamped there for as best as believed possible about 400 or 500 years. Had been one of their internal bases. And we drilled holes right on top of it. All the stinking air, all the black sooty air came right out as soon as the first hole was sunk, and all this soot came up. And, well, that's when all the hell broke loose, really, all started. Anyway, after we drilled all 4 holes, it took about 2 days to drill all 4 of them. And when you build a underground base, you drill 4 basic holes, and then you build called stopes or cross-member holes across, and then you use blasting equipment, special blasting equipment by the analyzation of the rock formation, and you literally blast out or tunnel out or deflagrate or melt rock out to build the large rooms that are required for this underground base. Well, in this process, I was lowered down the basket of one of these holes, and about from me to this elderly woman here in the front was sitting a 7-foot tall alien gray. The stench was worse than the worst garbage can you can imagine. The person the entity was absolutely horrible. I didn't waste any time. I reached for my pistol. At that time, as an engineer, I didn't have time to carry all the folderol of one of these big submachine guns that all the sea spray and the yellow fruit and all the outer perimeter and inner perimeter security people carried. I carried a little Walther PPK pistol with a 9-shot clip. This is in late August of 1979. Now, you got a regular suit of clothes, you got a regular clothes on, plus you're in almost like a spacesuit environment, and you're reaching for a gun. It's not the easiest thing to do, and then to pop a clip in it and start shooting. And I killed 2 of them. Yes, they're mortal, and they do die. However, in the process, one of them did this. All I remember is that he just kind of waved his hand in front of his chest, and the next thing I know, this blue beam hit me and just literally opened me up like a fish, and burnt my fingers right off of me. And it was some form of electrical force, because the kind of like being hit by a lightning bolt, burned all my toenails off of me, completely crispy crittered my left foot, burnt the shoe right off of me. All I remember was the smoking remains, and I'm still conscious, but in and out of, I didn't remember much. And there was a Green Beret that was right behind me that risked his life. In fact, he died. But he risked his life. He shoved me back in the basket and hit the button and took me up. And I wouldn't be alive talking to you today if it wasn't for him. I'm forever indebted.
See, this kind of makes you think. I mean, why would somebody go through all this trouble to speak on something that for what? I mean, there was no Facebook, there was no TikTok, there was no YouTube, there was no social media platforms to be famous. And why would somebody go in and make these elaborate stories? So it does make you think. I mean, maybe it was a hoax, or maybe there was some truth to it. Along the speech tours Phil would do, he would share these objects that he had that he would claim that were not made by humans. But let me know what you think. Phil Schneider passed away in January 1996. Suicide was the official cause of death. The events leading up to Phil Schneider's death, however, are what makes it very controversial. And this led after the speech in May 1995. Phil discussed the alien agenda, the New World Order, the Black Projects, secret military bases, and much, much more. After his death, neither the police nor the medical examiners completed their investigations. Many believe that he was a victim of his freedom of speech because of his knowledge and desires to go public. And to add to that, Phil also stated that he was going to publish a book containing everything he knows. His manuscripts, photographs, and notes were nowhere to be found after his death. Phil was found by his friend Al Pratt, who suspected something was wrong with Phil since he didn't hear from him for several days. Al went to Phil's apartment several days in a row. He knocked on the door, but there was no answer. But what was strange is that his car was still there in the parking lot each time that he went to his apartment. 5 days later, he decided, hey, this is enough. He called the police and the building manager, and they entered the apartment, and that's when they found Phil Schneider's body lying there dead. So this all leads to, was this one giant hoax for attention? Was Phil seeking attention and committed suicide? Or did Phil really have something to share that the Black Projects didn't want him sharing to the public? That does it for today's video. Hit that thumbs up. God bless.